Hi, AP Psychology students, and welcome back. Today we are continuing with the biological basis of behavior unit, but we are moving into a new topic, and that topic is sleep. So this aligns with the College Board curriculum, topic 1.5. The learning objective is explain how the sleep-wake cycle affects behavior and mental processes throughout the day and night. And when we're talking about sleep, there's really two essential questions that we're going to hope to get at. So the first is what happens to our brains and our bodies during sleep? And then second is what theories explain why we sleep and what happens if we don't. Okay, so to start off, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of consciousness. So although this unit or this topic is about sleep specifically, sleep is one part of a larger idea of consciousness. So consciousness is defined as the subjective awareness of ourselves and our environment. And consciousness is one of those slippery topics in that it's a big deal, like being aware, knowing if you're aware, knowing how aware you are, right? Those things are important, but it's hard to talk about, right? It's like, how do you can't hold it, you can't see it, you can't touch it. So this is one of those ideas where it's not always easy to study it. In the beginning of psychology, consciousness was a main factor that they wanted to study, and then we moved away from it, and we were really only studying behavior because you couldn't see consciousness. And then in the recent history, like since from the 1960s on, we've gotten better technology, and so we've been able to study consciousness on different levels. This graph here, or this diagram, is really awesome in that it shows kind of all the different levels of consciousness from highly controlled processes, so something like studying for a math or an AP Psych test, to the unconscious, the unconscious, like our psychoanalytic, or unconsciousness as in like completely unconscious, like knocked unconscious, completely unaware. It includes altered states, and then of course where we're going to spend most of our time talking about sleep and dreams. Okay, so when we talk about sleep, it's important to know that sleep is part of our circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is a 24-ish, sometimes some things say 25, 24, whatever, 24-ish hour biological clock that matches the cycle of the day. And while most of what we talk about when it comes to circadian rhythm, if you've ever heard it kind of used, is about sleeping and being awake, it does also regulate other body processes like body temperature, cortisol, muscle strength, reaction time, coordination, all of those things you can see listed in the picture. And they are high and low at different points of the day, right? So the way the circadian rhythm works is that it is kind of gets information from the outside environment due to the sun. So light or artificial light kind of activates different sensors in our eyes, which then interact with something called the pineal gland in the brain, and this either releases melatonin and makes us sleepy, or suppresses melatonin and helps us feel more awake. What we know about circadian rhythm is that when we disrupt it, or when we do something that doesn't allow it to have its natural 24-hour flow, we tend to have problems, right? So first one is jet lag. If you ever traveled to somewhere where they have like a different time zone, you feel tired when they're awake, and everything's all kind of mixed up, and it takes several days sometimes, depending on how big the gap is, to get used to the new circadian rhythm of where you are. Shift work, so people who work the night shift, right, they have to be awake when their bodies want to be asleep, and so this can cause a lot of health problems, but it also can cause like a lot more accidents on the job, and it's not something your body ever gets used to. So we used to think that like if you work the night shift your whole life, your circadian rhythm would just switch, but it doesn't, right? You're always working against your body's natural clock. And puberty, right? So interestingly enough, puberty is, and I don't know if it's so much a disruption more than it's more like a shift in your circadian rhythm. But if you take a look, this is an adult circadian rhythm. So you see that melatonin starts to secrete about 9 p.m. And if we have a teenage circadian rhythm, teens start to get tired around 11 p.m. So it's about a 2-hour shift in the circadian rhythm, which can have a big impact when your teens are expected to wake up and kind of function at the same time as adults are, but their circadian rhythm wants them to be asleep longer. It's one of the reasons why we've gone to later start times for schools, because we've seen great benefits. Okay, so now talking specifically about sleep. So what's interesting is that sleep also has its own cycle. So we have a circadian rhythm that's like sleep-wake cycles, but then sleep itself also has its own cycle. And this is about 60 to 90 minutes long, and it has 4 distinct phases, and you go through this cycle over and over and over again, about 5 to 7 times throughout your night, right? And the way that we know what stage of the cycle you're in is by using an EEG, right? And that EEG provides information about the brain waves, and those brain waves tell us about the stage of sleep you're in. Okay, so let's talk about these different stages. Like I said, it has 4 stages that humans go through over and over and over again in the night's sleep. So the first stage, stage 1, this is when you are kind of in the lightest sleep. It's when you have those hypnagogic sensations, so like the floating sensation or the falling or the jerking, right? Those happen in stage 1. Stage 2 sleep, and the sleep waves you can see are getting a little bit deeper and slower, and this is when you have special waves called sleep spindles and K complexes that kind of come into play that are connected with memory. And then stage 3, and this used to be called stage 3-4, stage 3, so you might see it differently in different places, but ultimately this is what we call slow wave sleep. It is the deepest sleep you have, and the waves are the deepest and slowest, right? You can see there's a big difference in these waves from the waves that you have when you are first falling asleep and when you are awake, right? Now, all of these 3 stages, right, are sometimes called stage 1 or also NR1, and that's because they are NREM, or they are not REM. So they are all the non-REM stages. So that leaves our 4th stage is REM, right? And REM stands for rapid eye movement, right? And that's because your eyes really do like rapidly shift underneath your eyelids during this stage. And we think of this stage as paradoxical. So what that means is that you have a very active brain, right? The brain waves, if you look, are almost matching those of being awake, right? So your brain is highly active, but so much of the rest of your body is relaxed, and so much so that your body is like paralyzed. So you do not move during the stage of sleep. It's why you don't act out your dreams. And it's where the most dreaming happens. So the most vivid dreams, the most time spent in dreams are reported when woken up from REM sleep. Okay, so like I said, you go through this cycle multiple times a night, and it should look like this on a nice, healthy sleep chart. So you see you have awake, then you go right into stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, then back up to 2, then you go up to REM. So you don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3 REM. You go 1, 2, 3, 2 REM, and REM kind of replaces that stage 1, or like comes right before it, and you don't wake up. Now, as you'll notice, you do sometimes wake up from REM in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's just for like a quick second. Sometimes it could be, you don't even notice it. You go right back into sleep. Sometimes you might recognize it. You do wake up a few times just for brief moments during your sleep. The other thing to notice about this sleep chart is that our deep sleep, right, that slow wave sleep, that deep sleep, right, a lot of it happens in the beginning of the night versus at the end of the night you have more of that REM sleep. So they are what we call inversely related, right? More REM at the end of the night and more deep sleep at the beginning of the night. Okay, so why do we sleep? So the first theory is that we use it for memory. So research has shown that when you sleep, your memory gets sorted, stored, and organized, right? And we actually test people. We give them something to learn before, then we have them take a good night's sleep, and then we test them after versus a different group that didn't have that same night's sleep. And what do we know, or what does the research show? That people who sleep perform better. So it's why it's important to sleep before a big test or when you're doing any studying, because it helps your brain organize the information. Sleep is also really important for our bodies to restore themselves, right? So sleep is when we heal infections. It helps with the immune system. They're finding that it helps the brain kind of clear out these protein fragments and other free radicals that are linked to damage in the brain, like Alzheimer's, right? So it's important for both of those reasons. Also, we found that during stage 3 sleep, which is that slow wave sleep, our pituitary gland releases human growth hormone, which of course is very important for our growth as human beings. Okay, so now that we know why we should sleep, right, the question is how much should we sleep? So sleep depends on age. It's not the same for everyone. Newborns and children need way more than adults. And you can see in the chart we have about 14 to 17 hours for a newborn versus a teenager, which is about 8 to 10, and an adult, which is about 7 to 9. So teenagers' circadian rhythms impact their sleep. We talked about this. So a lot of teenagers are sleep deprived because they need more sleep than adults, but their circadian rhythm puts them at a disadvantage for this because generally we feel like kids should be up and starting at school earlier than their bodies are prepared to do so. And then the average adult needs about 7 to 9 hours. There are genetic variations, and these genetic variations are very rare, but there is about 3% of the population they think that has this short sleep gene. There's 3 different variations that could represent this gene, where you actually feel about as good as 8 hours of sleep on 5. So their sleep is like more compressed and more consolidated. But before you think this is you and you only need to sleep 5 hours a night, it's definitely not you. 3% is a very, very rare, small percentage point, and most of us need that 7 to 9 hours or 8 to 10 as teenagers. Okay, so factors that interrupt our sleep, right? Stress. So if you have a big, test coming up or a lot of stress going on in your life, it can make it hard to sleep. Technology. So having your phone, the blue light is not great for circadian rhythm and melatonin. Drugs or alcohol. So while depressants might make you feel tired because they slow down your central nervous system, they disrupt your REM, so you don't get a good sleep. And then there are a bunch of sleep disorders. Not all, you don't have to know all of them, but these are the ones you have to know. And they're pretty common. You probably have heard of all of these before. So insomnia, where you have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep. Narcolepsy, where you have these attacks of sleepiness and you kind of like fall asleep. REM, motor behavior disorder, which is where you act out your dreams, so you're not paralyzed during REM. Sleep apnea, where you have issues with breathing during sleep, and that often presents as like loud snoring. And then somnambulism, which is also known as sleepwalking. And yes, sleepwalking is a sleep disorder, and it happens during stage 3 sleep. All right. So today we've talked about what happens to your brain and body during sleep and theories for why we sleep. Make sure you can answer those essential questions. And remember, AP Psycho's psychology is flippin' awesome.